I have terrific news. They still make good Agatha Christie movies. Hi, my name's Miles Ledoux. I like to compare Agatha Christie film and TV adaptations to the books they were based on. Today I'm comparing two of the most recent Christie adaptations, Murder is Easy and Why Didn't They Ask Evans? A couple years ago I did a video on an earlier adaptation of Murder is Easy. You can find a link to it in the description. Murder is Easy, also titled Easy to Kill, was published in 1939 and has had multiple adaptations. There was one in 1982, which I love, and a later one with Miss Marple added in, which I don't. The story follows Luke Fitzwilliam, who meets a sweet old lady on a train. She tells him there have been multiple murders in her village, but before she can name the killer, she dies in an apparent accident. Luke takes on the responsibility of investigating and stopping the killer himself. The new TV adaptation was released just last year. They've moved the time period to 1954, but before we get into the changes they made, first I want to talk about the things I loved the most. Lavinia Pinkerton, the lady on the train, is played by Penelope Wilton. She's absolutely the best person you could get to play this character. We, the audience, are supposed to fall in love with her, just like the main character does, and Wilton is perfect for that.
How can someone murder 3 people in an English village without it being noticed?
I noticed, my dear.
Next we have the Bells and Motley, the inn where Luke stays in Witchwood. The Bells and Motley is a location that's intrinsic to the Agatha Christie stories featuring Mr. Quinn and Mr. Satterthwaite, and it makes me so happy that they kept this cameo reference. Hopefully we'll get more of these micro-crossovers in future productions. Those were my two favorite yay moments when I was watching, so moving on to things they changed, such as names. There's a very, very important name change, which totally altered the tone of the film. I consider it a massive improvement. They changed the name of Lavinia's cat to Algernon. The cat's name in the book was Wonky Poo. Oh, Agatha. 2 of the suspects from the book are left out, including Mr. Ellsworthy, which surprised me as he's a fairly important red herring. But what surprised me even more was that I didn't notice. The characters who are in the film are so vibrant and deep that you feel it's just the right amount. I especially liked the development of certain characters whom we didn't see a lot of in the book. Dr. Thomas becomes a sycophantic closet racial cleansing fanatic. Dr. Humblebee, now Reverend, is still alive when we meet him, and he's a secular caller of bullshit. Major Horton comes off at first as a racist jerk, but it turns out he's a disillusioned ex-colonialist who uses his privilege to stand up for those who don't have it. Which brings us to the lead. Luke Fitzwilliam is now Luke Obiako Fitzwilliam from Nigeria. He's come to England to work for the British government, though his fellow countrymen think he should be back home, fighting for independence. This is a massive character overhaul, but you would hardly know it because it fits in so well with the story, so much so that it feels original. All Luke's actions are consistent with his personality, and some events from the book are turned from coincidental into cause and effect. For instance, Lavinia sits in a carriage with Luke in the first place because her father was stationed in Nigeria. Beyond functionality, though, Luke's character is likable. He's kind, he's moral, he lives his values, and he's really clever. I love how he chooses just the right moment to drop the news of Lavinia's death, to observe people's reactions. I would not mind if they made up a new story just so they could bring his character back in a sequel. I would watch it. Luke's ally, Bridget, is just as well done, even though they do away with her resembling a witch. Again, though, you don't notice because when a story is well told, you're less inclined to nitpick. Her chemistry with Luke is wonderful, and unlike the 1980s version, where I thought they spent too much time on the romance and not enough on the suspects, this version finds a much better balance. The only thing I have to complain about is that some of the clues are withheld from the audience a little too long. There are several great reveal moments throughout the film, but when we get to the solution, it feels like an info dump. It's still a great denouement, I just think a mystery movie should always be solvable, not just guessable. I'm not going to go in-depth about the plot like I normally do, other than to say they hit all the book's main story beats and included my favorite lines from the novel.
He was struck down by divine wrath.
Basically, they turned a great book into a colorful, engaging movie, without resorting to shock tactics or shoehorning extra and unnecessary story elements. They trusted the source material and only made changes that would enhance it. Highly recommend. Why Didn't They Ask Evans, another standalone Agatha Christie novel, published in 1934, also adapted multiple times. The 1980 adaptation was one of the first made-for-television Christie adaptations, and starred James Warwick and Francesca Annis, who would also go on to play Christie Sleuth's Tommy and Tuppence. And once again, a few decades later, it spawned a disastrous Miss Marple adaptation. The one I want to talk about came out in 2022, a three-part miniseries written and directed by, and featuring, Hugh Laurie. The title comes from the dying words of a man who's just fallen from a cliff. They're heard by Bobby Jones, who, along with his not-so-secret crush, Frankie Derwent, sets out to discover the truth behind the man's words, and his death. The first thing I want to highlight is the performance by Will Poulter. Bobby in the book is a charming goof, but in the film, our very first impression of him is that he's competent, clever, and sympathetic. As before, I'm not going to do a side-by-side comparison of the plot of book and movie. Even if you're familiar with the story, I really hope you check this adaptation out, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone. However, I will say the film makes a fairly major change at the end of the first episode, which gives Bobby a much more personal reason for wanting to solve the mystery. Frankie is just as easy to root for her verbal wit and sass. A lot of the dialogue in the film is original, but it all feels like Agatha Christie. I also like that they enlarged the part of Bobby's friend, Badger, whose name has been changed to Knocker in the film. In the book, Badger/Knocker was a ne'er-do-well side character with barely a reason to be in the story. Here, he has a deep friendship and camaraderie with Bobby, providing wisdom and perspective. As with Murder is Easy, outside of a few carefully chosen major plot changes, even though things don't happen exactly the way they happen in the book, the same events all occur. I like the little clues they added, like the keychain and the red pen. For a visual storytelling medium, they tie things together much better. When I first read the book, I remember being very confused, and even having reread it recently, I would still probably have a hard time summarizing the villain's scheme. This adaptation, I think, makes it much clearer. The ending in the book is, well, I can't quite say it's unique, but it is unusual. As for the ending in the film, you'll have to watch it and find out. Hugh Laurie and Sean Ejuwumi-Lebert, thank you so much for creating quality Agatha Christie adaptations. It is much appreciated. If you're not too busy, would you maybe please consider writing/directing another Christie? Maybe The Secret of Chimneys? Seven Dials Mystery? Maybe? Everybody, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.